Alright, so here's my parts. I went through a couple of different ideas on how to do this. My first plan was I was going to put this in front of the fuel rail. I was going to, I bought bunch of the, what do you call them, not Teflon, nylon fuel lines, and I was basically going to make a fuel line with a couple of different pieces that would go in between the fuel filter and the fuel rail. I just never got around to it, and the more I thought about it, I decided I was going to put it on the, put it behind the fuel rail. So the reason for going behind the fuel rail, just because I figured it'd be easier. And plus, I had this fuel pressure regulator that I kind of thought I was going to go ahead and install, and the more I thought about that, the more I realized I just didn't really feel like dicking with that, because if I put a new regulator on, it didn't match the, if the rate of the factory regulator is a 1-to-1, this should also be a 1-to-1, but it may not be exactly the same, and I'd have to basically retune the entire car, and it's an eBay regulator, so I just kind of decided to scrap that idea. Then I kind of came up with the easiest idea after I had bought these. So yeah, flex fuel sensor, then obviously you need an ECM that can accept a flex fuel sensor. I'm running a Escort unit, and it allows you to wire in a flex fuel sensor. So I bought sensor, pigtail, and a couple of little doodads to attach everything together. So yeah, basically what I've decided to do with my setup here is I'm going to go right off the regulator, and the sensor. This moves quite a bit. The sensor will basically just wedge in between this line and the regulator, and to do that I bought a couple of adapters. So this is where the factory spring lock connector fuel return will plug into, and then the other half is just a 6AN, and then the other part is what will plug into the back of the regulator, and it's also adapts to a 6AN. So say this is the regulator, and this is the return line. So essentially what I've set out to do here is just make a simple adapter. So we have these quick connects that plug onto the filter. These are 6AN return line. Well, I guess that would go on this side, because then that would plug into, no. Yeah. So then that plugs into the regulator, and then this will go that way, and then the return line will plug into there. I was originally going to build a bunch of line, and instead I decided to just get a coupler. So $6 for that. Oh shit. So then essentially, here's my first adapter. Man, that's going to be gangly. And then potentially I can use this. I don't like the fact that it's a 90, but it's what I got. And that should work. Like so. Let's pull this out for now. There we go. And that should just plug right into the factory fuel line. That's really long. That is ridiculously long. I might build a line so that I can tuck this back behind somewhere, but I might not. So I'm going to go ahead and decide on exactly how I want to do this. Get this out of the way. I believe it's the red one. You also want to make sure before you disconnect the lines that the system's depressurized. On a return style system like this, it should technically always be depressurized, but if you really want to make sure, you pull the relay for the fuel pump and just crank the car over until, you know, you think the lines are dead. But I've done this a few thousand times already, and I know that the system doesn't hold any pressure once you turn the car off. It all just returns back to the tank. There may be a little pressure on that side because of the regulator, but for the most part, it all returns back to the tank. There shouldn't be any pressure. There we go. There's probably going to be fuel in there, though. Why not? Completely dry. So yeah, that's a... I guess it's not that bad. Jesus, yeah, that's way down there. I don't want to bend it too much because it is nylon. So yeah, I may build a short cable. That's too straight down, so that's not going to work. That most certainly ain't going to work. I'm not really sure how I want to go about this. Alright, so this isn't ideal. I didn't realize how long the adapters would be. Maybe I can find... that'd be a hard thing to find. Anyway, so this is basically what I've come up with. Is I'll mount the flex fuel sensor over here. A couple of 90s on it. Because this nylon, the main problem here is this this nylon return line. It's not nearly as flexible as I thought it was. So I'm fairly limited to where I can place this thing, because it's gotta bend naturally for the most part without too much stress on it. So I'll do that, and then I'll have the line that comes out of the regulator go in there, and then, you know, something like that. It's a lot further away than I wanted it to be, but it is what it is. So I gotta make a line, and should be able to hook that up. At least the mechanical part of it anyways. So I need to go ahead and attach this line. I already had one end on it, so I don't know if you've ever put these things together. They're pretty simple. Just take the back of the fitting off. This slides over your line here. You want to make sure the rubber is butted all the way up to the threads. Really got to get it in there. I don't know if you can see it, but alright, so now once that's in there, it's as simple as threading this in. Now you want to make sure that when you crank this thing down, you don't push the hose out. Use the vise, because that's what it's here for. Really should clean up in here. It's a fucking disaster. Save that guy for later. And I guess I don't want to mar these up, so I had some tape somewhere. Where did my blue tape go? There she is. I'm probably still gonna end up scratching this thing up, but I figure I can at least try and not destroy it. They sell they actually make special wrenches just for putting these things together that won't hurt the finish. I never bought a set because I figured I'm not going to be putting too many of these together. Lo and behold, it's a much larger wrench than I need, but I'll just start cranking her down. Like I said, you want to make sure that the line doesn't actually start pushing out of the bottom. But it looks like she's staying put. A little piece of tape stuck in between there. Whoops. But it feels like a line. It feels pretty solid. So I think before I get to the wiring, I'm going to plug all this stuff in and make sure nothing leaks. It's not a 17, it's probably a 16. I don't think I have a 16. Who the fuck has a 16? It's a Ford, so it's probably a fucking standard size. Actually bottomed out before it tightened up. Hopefully that's in there nice and tight. Alright, so I'm going to plug this in, and then I'm going to turn the fuel pump on and make sure it doesn't spew fuel everywhere. Leaking like a sieve, yay! So yeah, I kind of felt it when I put this together, that this fucking sleeve here, you know, it's making contact, and it's not actually, I don't think the ends are mated. It feels tight. It's obviously not tight enough though. Initially what I was going to do was I was just going to shave this lip down, which won't take very long, but I think I can just use this guy. Might be able to. Yeah, God, it would work if it wasn't for the stupid fucking catch can being right there. Alright, so after a brief intermission, relocated the catch can. Got a zip tie in here that will temporarily hold the sensor until I think of a better way to mount this. I'm pretty sure someone makes a bracket, but it's sturdy enough, right? Alright, let's make sure she's not leaking. Sounds like she's a running. I don't see any drips. Yeah, I gotta think of a better way to mount that. Alright, so now we got that figured out. Now I have to figure out the wiring. So I already have basically what I did, same thing I did with my boost control solenoid, is I use a pre-existing harness that currently isn't being used. So we've got this connector, which is here for, I think it's for, I don't remember what it was originally. It was either for the VIX actuator, or it was for the fuel pressure regulator doodad. So, like I said, no longer being used, but it runs all the way to the ECM, and there's a 5 volt, or there's a, a 12 volt power source. The only thing I'm missing is a ground. So I do have to find a place to ground it, but that shouldn't be too difficult. So I'm going to disconnect the battery and get to connecting this harness. Alright, kind of dark in there, but yeah, so these two wires, the red wire is vehicle power, this green wire goes back to the ECM, and inside the Megasquirt I went ahead and I routed that pin to the flex fuel input. So this is a flex fuel sensor, so I'm going to do, this is the vehicle power, this will be the wire that goes to the ECM, so this will go to the green wire, this will go to the white and red wire, and this I'm just going to ground somewhere on the head. I was going to find a wire that went back to the ECM and tap into that, but that's just a pain in the ass. I'm just going to put a ring terminal on it and probably attach it to the intake manifold flange bolt and just call it good. So I'm just going to go down there. I just want to make sure I have enough that I can route this and tuck it away and leave that ground long. tape this so that tape it so that it stays down and out of my way. Old wiring as always. Yeah, it's dirty as hell. But, you know, the car's 25 years old or so. So, I'll just put some flux on it and there we go. Yeah, that is like super filthy. Now, typically when you do automotive stuff, you don't really want to solder a bunch of stuff. Solder's been known to be kind of unreliable in the automotive environment, at least inside the engine bay. You know, stuff starts to corrode and crack, but in order to do a proper crimp, you need a pretty nice pair of crimpers. I don't have those, so solder it is. It's probably way more solder than I need, or way more flux than I need. Come on. What the fuck is wrong with me? There we go. Looks good to me. That looks pretty nice. Alright. So this is the ground for everything, or for the sensor. I figure why not sleeve it, even though no one's going to see it. I'll feel better knowing that it's done. Maybe. I should guarantee that it won't come off. Why aren't you focusing? Pretty nice looking. Alright, so I got the sensor plugged in, and need to put the battery terminal back on. Alright guys, it's pretty late, so I'm not going to play with this too much, but I'm just going to check and make sure that the sensor is actually working. So, well, the gauge is showing 10%. I feel like somewhere there's a way I can test the sensor. Calibrate thermostat, AFR, battery. I don't see anything there. But yeah, it's showing 10%, so that I believe that's a good sign. I know if the sensor was showing an error, it defaults to a frequency that's like really high, so it would be beyond 100%. And that would be an error fault. But I'm not seeing that, so it looks like it's working. So here in sunny Florida, it's going to be raining for the next week or so, probably up until about Friday. And I generally don't drive the car in the rain because it's just not a very pleasant experience. There's no AC, so you gotta cruise with the windows up, and it gets hot and muggy, and it's just not enjoyable. So the only place locally that I can get ethanol from is from where I work. So I suppose I could take a gas can and bring some back, but that's just kind of silly. So I probably won't update this video until probably Friday. If I even post it, then I may not. But anyways, looks like that's working. So the Escort is now a flex fuel vehicle. Also, there's some settings in here under fuel settings, fuel sensor, where you set the minimum frequency, the maximum frequency, what each of those means. Like the minimum frequency 50 hertz would be 0% ethanol, 150 hertz is 100% ethanol, and then you have a multiplier, fuel multiplier, and how much extra fuel. 100% is no change. I'm not sure why it's that way. It's kind of strange. But 100% basically means that there's no change in the fuel load. As you know, when you run ethanol, it requires about 30% more fuel. So, approximately. So basically what this does is this allows you to adjust the fuel load according to how much ethanol there is. So at the bottom, 100 is no difference. It's not going to add any extra fuel to your fuel tables. At 163%, it's going to add 63% more fuel, which is kind of silly. I'm sure that's a programming thing. Some programmer designed that way. I would just do it as 0% and 60%, but whatever. So 100% is 0, 163 is 63%. 63% seems like a lot. Well, yeah, because E85 would be about, I don't know, I'll have to do some math and figure out exactly how much I need to increase the fuel load in order to compensate for the extra fuel. That's going to take some tuning. I won't know what that is until I actually get some ethanol in here and tune it. So, and then you have the timing adjustment. So basically what this does is it will add or take away timing depending on how much ethanol is in the fuel. So the low end of the scale, it will add no additional timing because it shouldn't. It should just be, your standard base table. And then at the top of the table, you can add, right now it's set to -13. I'm not quite sure why. It's just a safety thing. But anyways, generally with E85, you have to add timing. So you have to, that's actually degrees, it's not a percentage. Okay, so like at the top end of the table at 100% ethanol, I'd probably add, say 5 degrees more timing on top of everything. Maybe more, I don't know. Like I said, I'll have to sit and do some research and figure out exactly what I should be running there. But yeah. Then these last two settings, fallback, fuel multiplier, basically if the sensor sends out a frequency of 163 hertz, that is essentially an error, and Escort will recognize that as an error, and it will default everything into kind of a limp mode. Basically, it'll say, I don't know what type of fuel is in there. and it'll revert everything back to your base table. Or no, it looks like it'll still keep fuel where it is. I'm not sure what it'll do for fuel. But anyways, it'll take all the timing out to keep you from blowing your engine up. So yeah, I got some research to do. Alright, so it's a few days, probably like a week since the last video. The weather is slightly better, still probably gonna monsoon later today. But decided to drive the car in and get some flex fuel or get some E85 and make sure that the sensor is actually working correctly. Alright, so right now I have about half a tank of normal gas, so this won't be true. I mean, I won't be able to get the full E85 effect, but like I said, this is just for making sure that the sensor is operating correctly. There we go. So it should take a little bit up. There it is. Holy shit, look at that. It actually fucking works. So right now I'm running at about 38% ethanol. See that there? And we can see the air-fuel ratio is pretty close to where it should be. That's pretty cool.